परतत्वे सदा लीनो रामकृष्णसमाज्ञया यो धर्मस्थापनरतो वीरेशं तं नमाम्यहम्. Friends, we are trying to study Swami Vivekananda's practical Vedanta, and on the last occasion we saw the perspective for practical Vedanta, for Swamiji's practical Vedanta, and also read about 4 paragraphs. What did we see? First thing we saw was that practical Vedanta is a part of Swamiji's Jnana Yoga. It was a part of the book itself, or 4 editions. Because of the bulk, in the 5th edition it was separated. Even today, in the Bengali edition of Jnana Yoga, it is within Bengali, in the Jnana Yoga. And then we talked about the arrangement of the Jnana Yoga. In New York, Swamiji was running 2 parallel classes, Jnana Yoga for advanced learners and Jnana Yoga for beginners. And the lectures or the classes he took for the advanced learners, that later on was published by Swami Saradanji from Udbodhan under the title Science and Philosophy of Religion. And that is the orthodox method of teaching Sankhya philosophy, and then how it is limited, how it is perfected by the Vedanta. That is the style in that lecture. And the other classes which Swamiji styled Jnana Yoga for beginners, he was reading Upanishad after Upanishad. We can find Upanishad in his hand and quoting and chanting from that time to time. In that series, the last lecture, dated the 5th of November 1896, was on Chandogya Upanishad. And after that lecture, somebody asked him a question. Theory is beautiful indeed, but can it be put into practice? As a reply to that, Swamiji has spoken on Chandogya itself 4 more lectures, and that is published in this Practical Vedanta as part 1, 2, 3, 4. Now after that, I mistaken something. I missed a link, please. The New York lectures for beginners form the second part of Swamiji's Jnana Yoga. In English Jnana Yoga there are no parts, but the later half is this New York lecture, later on. Swamiji took another series of classes on Jnana Yoga, did not call it beginners or advanced, in London. And that is the main bulk of Swamiji's Jnana Yoga. And those lectures are given first and then New York lecture. That is the mistake which I made. And the last lecture in London was 5th November on Chandogya. And after that, Swamiji has spoken in London, these 4 lectures. So the rightful place would be there. But because of the bulk, they have been separated. This is the first thing I told last occasion. Another thing I told was, if it is a part of Jnana Yoga, why I am taking it first before taking Jnana Yoga? And there I referred to, this is what was taught by my Guruji. Jnana Yoga, many people study and they derive intellectual pleasure from that. And there it ends. Swamiji's dealing of Upanishad is so wonderful, so beautiful, that we understand Upanishads. And the understanding of Vedanta gives great joy. That is intellectual pleasure, that is not the joy of spirituality. And that is what usually happens after studying Jnana Yoga. Now if we study practical Vedanta first, our mind will become oriented. That Vedanta is to be practiced. And I have been telling you again and again that Vedanta is a science of experience. So how to experience that? And when the mind is oriented into that fashion, and with that when we study Jnana Yoga, our moorings will not go wrong, and we will find in Jnana Yoga also how Swamiji is emphasizing experience, and we have to experience all the truths or the supreme truth described in Swamiji's Jnana Yoga through different Upanishads. And that is why we are taking it first. Another thing I told was, may not be necessary, that on flimsy grounds the modern scholars base their theories. And somebody in Germany said that Swamiji did not know any practical Vedanta. Deussen was influenced by Schopenhauer. And when Swamiji met Deussen, after that he has given this lecture. On this basis that Swamiji learned practical Vedanta from Deussen or from Schopenhauer. I told you that one of my friends had sufficiently contradicted it by doing thorough research in advanced studies, Institute of Advanced Studies at Shimla. So that is, let us not think of that. Then we came to the book Practical Vedanta. And we may reread the beginning today. Practical Vedanta Part 1, delivered in London, 10th November 1896. I have been asked to say something about the practical position of the Vedanta philosophy. As I have told you, theory is very good indeed, but how are we to carry it into practice? If it be absolutely impracticable, no theory is of any value whatever, except as intellectual gymnastics. That is what I told you, because intellectual pleasure. Every gymnastic activity gives pleasure. The Vedanta, therefore, as a religion, must be intensely practical. And this also I told you, Swamiji does not take Vedanta as philosophy merely, he takes it as a religion. Philosophy is an intellectual pursuit of truth, while religion is a way of life. And in that respect I told you, these days, so many wrong thought currents are coming, and religion is identified with ritualism or formalism, and we want to separate religion from spirituality. While in Swamiji's language, they are equated everywhere. So religion is not a formal something, religion is the way of life based upon Vedanta. Now, one more point Swamiji there said, referring to in Swamiji's days, what was happening in England. It happens everywhere, every time, but predominantly in England, what is due to the Pope give it, what is due to the Caesar give it. That means social life was totally cut away from religion. And that Swamiji is telling cannot be allowed. And not only, we must be able to carry it out in every part of our life. And not only this, the fictitious differentiation between religion and the life of the world must vanish. For the Vedanta teaches oneness, one life throughout. Now on this point let me tell something which may not be palatable to all. These days we have removed the distinction between the two and made everything secular. Swamiji is asking remove the difference and make everything spiritual. That is the vast difference. No difference between spirituality or religion and everyday life. Let us make everything secular. That is the most dangerous point. Swamiji will be pointing out that also. After that we proceeded with Swamiji to show that Vedanta has been practiced. Swamiji has used one sentence somewhere in this very book. It has been practiced first and theorized afterwards. Now, Vedanta is not a matter which you can practice like that. Some will define what is practice. The meaning is that, I will give an example. Bhagavan Buddha, after mixing with all the existing religious sects at that time, sat for meditation, addressing his own self as, I will not get up from this seat unless I get the supreme knowledge. And he got it. And when he got it, the first reaction or response, whatever you call, was mad like joy. For 7 days he was circumambulating there where he got the realization. Out of mad joy. Then he sat down and thought, what I have realized, what does it mean, how to present it to people. So theory is, intellectual theory on Vedanta is a separate matter than experience. Separate matter, nothing to do with each other. There is a wrong concept these days due to Shankar's presentation. Shankar goes on emphasizing the experience, but his presentation is so much intellectual and logical that people have forgotten the moorings of Vedanta. And they think Vedanta is something to be understood by intellect. But intellectual, there is one more class of people. They say, first let us understand Vedanta, then we will try to realize. That is the common thing in good Vedantins today. But I have not seen them proceeding further. I need not take names, but the ashramas which are famous for teaching Vedanta, one question was asked, let me take some name. In Kailash ashram, there was a great sadhu. His name was Harihar Tirtha. He was called Chote Maharaj because he never accepted the presidency. Now one of my friends went to him and asked, that whole day in Kailash we discussed Vedanta, is it sufficient to realize God? He said no, immediately. He said two more things are necessary. Our life must be pure. And after discussing Vedanta, we must do Manan and Nididhyasana, and then only we can experience. That was the clear statement. So, this is the orientation of Vedanta. Intellectual understanding, without that people can realize Vedanta. But without realization, intellectual understanding has no meaning. It is a separate thing. Buddhi may be used. Now, how Buddhi is used in Vedanta? Buddhi is used to deny the wrong things. That is Buddhi's work. But it cannot show the ways of truth. Swamiji has repeatedly told us, Buddhi has neither eyes nor gati. It is a scavenger, Swamiji says, which is necessary to keep the road clean. Otherwise, they will fall in some pit or some thorns. That Buddhi will save us. But the only motive power which has eyes and which can take us forward is our heart. Swamiji's voice. And heart is the instrument given by God to us for experience, our own real nature. Anyway, and that's why we are studying practical Vedanta first. And Swamiji in the beginning is showing that and one peculiar feature we find is that many of these thoughts have been the outcome not of retirement into forest, but have emanated from persons whom we expect to lead the busiest lives from ruling monarchs. And from the 5th chapter of Chandogya Upanishad, Swamiji has quoted the story of Shvetaketu. Shvetaketu being the son of a Brahmin, son of a recluse, son of the priestly class, thought that he has all knowledge. And he went to the king to preach knowledge to him. That king's name is Pravahan Jaivali. That country was called Panchala. And Pravahan asked him several questions, and Shvetaketu did not know any of them. So Pravahan told him that you do not know anything. Then Shvetaketu comes back to his father and says, why you have not taught me this? Father said, I also do not know. Let us go to the king. So he left the pride of his Brahminhood, went to the king and asked, Sir, those things which you asked my son, will you please teach me? The king said, this knowledge was never among the priests. It has always been cultivated by the kings. But you want, I will teach you. Then Swamiji comes to another point. And later on, when we come to the Bhagavad Gita, curiously enough, the scene is led on the battlefield, where Krishna teaches this philosophy to Arjuna. Now, on this point, I want to tell something additional. When the Mahabharata war was over, and Shri Krishna and Arjuna are sitting at ease side by side. There is a chapter in Mahabharata. Arjuna says, Lord, you taught me so many things, but in that battle and all that, I have forgotten many things. Will you please tell me again? Bhagavan says, if you are really forgotten, it is a misfortune to you, me and to the whole world. If you want to learn again, I am ready. But it can never reach that height which it reached there. The crisis in your mind made me talk like that. And there is a chapter in Mahabharata called Anugita. And it does not reach even any level of the height or depth reached in Bhagavad Gita. And that is what Krishna said. If you want to listen again, I will try, but it cannot be that. So, what Swamiji is telling, Arjuna has to fight. And Arjuna could listen. And Arjuna could absorb. And Arjuna could follow it in life. And we cannot. So, this was the point. Then one more point Swamiji has laid, that inactivity has to be avoided by all means. And inactivity going beyond work is not what we normally understand. And then he says that nor does inactivity become activity when it is combined with passion. And that is what we see in the world. All the passions, Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsar, are the normal promptings for a man to work. But Swamiji does not say that work is not spiritually beneficial. That work is not practical Vedanta. It cannot become work at all, Swamiji says, by passion. And in this respect, Swamiji said, that is Thakur and Swamiji's time. I also thought in that way years ago. That is their style. But as I am growing older, getting more experience, I find it is not true. The less passion there is, the better we work. The calmer we are, the better for us. Up to this, we had read last time. Now, come to the next paragraph, very important. The Vedanta preaches the ideal. And the ideal, as we know, is always far ahead of the real, of the practical, as we may call it. Now understand? Some will explain further. What we think as practical, that which we can do. The thief will say stealing is most practical. The professor should say teaching is most practical. You know, there is a story about it, very important story, used by Swami Vivekananda. The context is, in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, some doctors have come to treat Sri Ramakrishna. Dr. Sarkar was the main doctor, but there was a Dr. Bhaduri. And he told Sri Ramakrishna, when you become all right, what will you do? You should practice homeopathy. Narendra uttered immediately, nothing like leather, sir. You know the story of nothing like leather? In the days of Greece, there were city-states. And they dug a canal and they became lazy, nobody will attack us. And the spies told it to other nations and they attacked them. When they knew that the attack has come on the door, the council sat. And they were thinking we should raise a compound of iron. Somebody said this or that. And the cobbler says, nothing like leather, sir. If you erect a compound of leather, nothing will come to us. But the solution was not that. Solution was referred to in other places. Horatius. The three people went and fought and they broke down the bridge, that was the... But nothing like leather Swamiji used in that respect, that for this doctor, homeopathy is the only practical thing. So Sri Ramakrishna, instead of teaching and practicing spirituality, should practice homeopathy. Otherwise, what is the use of life, he says. So Swamiji here wants to tell us that is our idea of practical. What I can do is practical. And he straight away denies Vedanta is not practical in this sense. Vedanta is ideal. And the ideal, as we know, is always far ahead of the real, the practical. So we have to raise ourselves. That is practical Vedanta. We have to raise ourselves to a height where Vedanta will become practical. That is the main point. And on the last occasion I told you, Swamiji's practical Vedanta he has told on 3 phases. The first phase is how much we can imbibe from the Vedanta to be brought into practice immediately, like self-confidence, like universal love, etc. Second phase is how to realize that Vedanta. That is the real practical Vedanta. And at that place, deviating from the Chandogya which he is talking, he has brought from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Shravan Manan Nidhasan is the practical Vedanta. That is the second phase of practical Vedanta. That will lead us to the third phase. That if Vedanta becomes real in our life, then how we will behave. That becomes the final phase of practical Vedanta. So Swamiji has preached practical Vedanta in 3 phases. Now here he is telling Vedanta preaches the ideal. This is what we want to become. To become that, we have to raise ourselves through 2 things. Through implementing or finding the implications of the Vedantic theories, what can be practiced immediately. And those will make us ready to proceed further. And then we must have the Shravan Manan Nidhasan. That is the practical Vedanta. So, through Shravan Manana and Nidhasan, we have to raise ourselves to a particular height. I am reminded of something very different in this respect. Very different from this topic, but bearing upon this topic. Nivedita has tried to understand Holy Mother Sarada Devi. And through her letters, we can find that. I made some attempt some years back, and you may find in Vedanta Kesari, the glory of Holy Mother as seen by Sister Nivedita chronologically. First she says, Holy Mother is one of the greatest women. Then after some time, Holy Mother is the greatest woman. And then after some time, Holy Mother is the ideal woman. The ideal woman left by Sri Ramakrishna for the future women of the whole world. I will tell some fun. One of our great Swamis, Swami Buddhanand at Delhi, he wrote a series of articles that Nivedita is stealing Holy Mother on behalf of girls. Can we not follow her as our ideal? I think it is not stealing. Nivedita thought she has no right to speak about men, so she is talking about women. She is our ideal also. So understand the difference between ideal and the greatest woman? So, it bears to this topic. What we do, that is practical. In that way, Vedanta is not practical. Vedanta is practical in the sense of the ideal. And the ideal is, Swamiji says, always far ahead of the real or the practical, as we may call it. Then he explains this. A very important point in studying practical Vedanta is the explanation of this point. There are two tendencies in human nature. One is to harmonize the ideal with the life, and the other is to elevate the life to the ideal. It is a great thing to understand this, for the former tendency is the temptation of our lives. Example, I think that I can only do a certain class of work. Most of it perhaps is bad. Most of it perhaps has a motive power of passion behind it, anger or greed or selfishness. Now if anyone comes to preach to me a certain ideal, the first step towards which is to give up selfishness, to give up self-enjoyment, I think that is impractical. But when a man brings an ideal which can be reconciled with my selfishness, I am glad at once and jump at it. This is practical. That is the ideal for me. In this respect, I will refer to something. In the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, before coming to Thakur, Master Mahasaya had not actively thought of religion. Seeing Sri Ramakrishna and hearing his words, the thought came to him that unless we keep our mind in God, we cannot live a life in the world also. So he asked the question, Sir, how can we keep our mind in God? How means what we have to do. And Sri Ramakrishna gave him 6 practical instructions and 1 negative. Then Master Mahasaya started thinking, it cannot be practiced in the life which I am leading. but I have to practice it. And Sri Ramakrishna does not want me to give up the ideal householder's life. Sri Ramakrishna knows I am married, I have sons and daughters, and yet he wants me to practice this. The meaning is that I must change my lifestyle. So, important thing I am telling. So he asked the second question. Then, sir, how to live in this world? So that I can practice this. What question usually people ask? And in Gospel several times we see that question. Can we realize God in a householder's life? Can we attain bhakti in a householder's life? You know the implication? If you say no, you cannot, then we don't want because we are householders. And it can be done. Okay, we'll done. We are householders, we'll get it. Sri Ramakrishna replies to all these questions with a rider. Yes, you can, but you have to do like this. And Master Masha's question was not like that. So that is what Swamiji is telling here. What I can do, if you tell me yes, and most of the gurus do like this. I have attended Vedantic conferences. Brahma Satya, what Brahma nobody understands. Jagat Mithya, you are all Mithya. Jiva Brahma Ivana, but I am Brahma. What you should do? You should give me money, you should give me laddus, you should give me this, and you will remain what you are. I will go on talking to you, I will remain what I am. And people think nice. We should pay homage to him, be what we are. This is not practical. One of my teachers used to say, there are three sets of teachers. One person will say, no. If Shishya goes and says, what I am you know, sir, will you accept me as I am? One set of gurus will say, no, you purify yourself, you do this, you do that, then come to me. The other man will say, okay, you be what you are, I will be what I am. But the real guru will say, I accept you as you are, but I will not allow you to remain what you are. Are you ready? Many times the question is asked, is Vedanta for the common man? What is the answer? If the common man wants to remain common man, Vedanta is not for him, nothing is for him, his community itself is for him. And you need not be uncommon to come to Vedanta. But if a common man wants to become uncommon, if a common man wants to raise himself, then Vedanta is for him. And that is what Swamiji is proposing here. That there are two tendencies in our life. As the word orthodox has been manipulated into various forms, so has been the word practical. You know who is orthodox? Swamiji has told, my doxy is orthodoxy, your doxy is heterodoxy. So with practicality, what I think is practical is to me the only practicality in the world. If I am a shopkeeper, I think shopkeeping the only practical pursuit in the world. If I am a thief, I think stealing is the best means of being practical. Others are not practical. Swamiji has given the extreme example for us to understand. You see how we all use this word practical for things we like and can do. What we do, that we like. What we like, that we do. And that is practical. Therefore, I will ask you to understand that Vedanta, though it is intensely practical, is always so in the sense of the ideal. Intensely practical, that means we'll raise ourselves to that level, that is intensely. It can be practiced, but in the sense of the ideal. It does not preach an impossible ideal, that is practical. However high it be, and it is high enough for an ideal. High enough for an ideal, otherwise not on our level. In one word, the ideal is that you are divine. This is the 7th chapter of the Chandogya Upanishad. Thou art that. Thou art that is repeated 9 times in the 7th chapter of the Chandogya Upanishad, where Aruni is teaching Shvetaketu. This is the essence of Vedanta meditation. So practical Vedanta means to realize the word that. And practical Vedanta means to find the implications of the word that. This is the essence of Vedanta. After all its ramifications and intellectual gymnastics, you know the human soul to be pure and omniscient. You see that such superstitions as birth and death would be entire nonsense when spoken of in connection with the soul. With whatever concept of soul he had, H.W. Longfellow. There is a beautiful poem, the Psalm of Life. Dust thou art to dust returnest, was not spoken of the soul. That is what it is. So, you know the human soul to be pure and omniscient. You see that such superstitions as birth and death would be entire nonsense when spoken of in connection with the soul. To realize this is the practical Vedanta. To find the implications of this and use them in our life is practical Vedanta. So Vedanta is practical. It can be practiced as an ideal by raising ourselves. The soul was never born and will never die. Now in the first lecture of practical Vedanta, Swamiji is telling this. And all these ideas that we are going to die and are afraid to die are mere superstition. We are afraid to die. We are not the body. If we are the spirit, what can die? Why are we afraid of dying? This is practical Vedanta, mind you. So fearlessness has been described as the first divine quality in the 16th chapter of the Gita. And Swamiji has harped upon it. The beauty of, he says, Hinduism is that it preaches fearless. Upanishads preach fearlessness. And all such ideas that we can do this or cannot do that are superstition. Certain things we can do, certain things we cannot do. It is we means body, we means mind. There these limitations are there. If we are free from the limitations of body and mind, there is nothing which we cannot do. We can do everything. The Vedanta teaches men to have faith in themselves first. So first implication, Swamiji has started drawing the implications, and the first implication is that because you are divine, you may not know that, but you must have confidence in yourself, faith in yourself first. So please note down the point. Practical Vedanta, point number 1. Vedanta teaches men to have faith in themselves first. As certain religions of the world say that a man who does not believe in a personal God outside of himself is an atheist. What is our idea of God normally? He is outside. He rules the world, He creates the world, extra cosmic God. Not that God is my reality. Not that God is within me. They are the fields of Vedanta. But our ordinary concept of God is that God is outside me and is a person. Person means he has his own likes and dislikes. Person means he is not the impersonal I. He is not the impersonal reality of the world. In Sanskrit the terms are Nirguna Brahma and Saguna Brahma. So our normal idea of God is He may be the creator, preserver and destroyer of the world, but we do not understand God as our own soul or universal self. So outside. And they will say, if you do not believe this, you are Nastic. Maximum people have their own idea of God. And if you do not believe that, you are Nastika. So the Vedanta says, a man who does not believe in himself is an atheist. Not that he does not believe in God. See critically, personal God outside of himself. Not that he does not believe in God. He believes a God who is inside himself. He believes in God who is impersonal. So he believes in himself. Belief in myself, Swamiji will explain further. Belief in myself does not mean belief in my hands and my brain and no. That is not myself. Not believing in the glory of our own soul, is what the Vedanta calls atheism. Because it equates soul with God. To many, this is no doubt a terrible idea. Vast majority of mankind, this is a terrible idea. Swamiji said to Sri Ramakrishna, God is the creator, I am a created being. Will it not be sin to call myself as? So, to many this is no doubt a terrible idea, and most of us think that this ideal can never be reached. There is another point. Two things. One is that this idea is terrible. Secondly, we can never practice it. You know what answer Shankaracharya has given? Yes. If you traditionally have not heard the Vedanta, you cannot. If you are trying by your own reason and your own practicality, you cannot. The Saint Jnaneshwar has replied in his poetic way. Shankaracharya says, you have great daring to say that I cannot realize God. Jnaneshwar says, if God was not realizable, what are the Vedas? He compares Vedas with belching of the rishis. If your stomach is filled, belching comes. Those who are filled with God, their belching is the Vedas. So, two things, not believing or impractical. But the Vedanta insists that it can be realized by everyone. No distinction. There is neither man nor woman nor child, nor difference of race or sex nor anything that stands as a bar to the realization of the idea. This is very, very important. We hear from, unfortunately, from many so-called Vedantists, women have no entry. Women cannot practice Om. Women cannot practice Gayatri. One thing. Secondly, Brahmins alone can do this. Shudras cannot do this. Foreigners, mlechas, These are all wrong concepts. Vedanta accepts oneness. The same God is in all. And so, listen to Swamiji's language. There is neither man nor woman nor child, nor difference of race or sex, nor anything that stands as a bar to the realization of the ideal. Because Vedanta shows that it is realized already, it is already there. That is our real nature, that is what Vedanta practically is teaching. Manifest your real nature, assert your real nature, bring it out, realize it. It is already realized, this is. All the powers in the universe are already ours. It is we who have put our hands before our eyes and cry that it is dark. Sun is there. If we put our hands on our eyes, we say the sun is covered. If 2-3 clouds arise, we say the sun is covered. The clouds cover our vision, they do not cover the sun. Now Swamiji has become very bold to begin with. After all the preliminaries, he is telling that thou art, though it is terrible to hear. What is the solution Swamiji will give for this terrible to hear? You know that? Listen again and again, you will understand. That is the only solution. Today you are terrified. What Sri Ramakrishna did to Narendranath, you need not read to yourself, you read to me. So when he reads several times, it will click somewhere and you will understand. So, one funny thing I will tell. One of the dentists I had visited in Mumbai. Immediately as you enter the door, one signboard was there. The dentist comes on your nerves the way you visit him again and again. So, listen again and again, then you will get the truth. Because Swamiji says each man has already realized that, because that is that thou art, that is his real nature. So one day he must understand not only, but realize that. It is we who have put our hands before our eyes and cry that it is dark. Know that there is no darkness around us. Take the hands away and there is the light, which was from the beginning. Darkness never existed, weakness never existed. Darkness is weakness of our life. We who are foolish, we are fools, cry that we are weak. We who are fools cry that we are impure. Thus Vedanta not only insists that the ideal is practical, but that it has been so all the time, and this ideal is, this reality is our own nature. That is the Tattvamasi. Everything else that you see is false, untrue. Straight away. As soon as you say, I am a little mortal being, you are saying something which is not true. You are giving the lie to yourselves. You are hypnotizing yourselves into something vile and weak and wretched. Swamiji has that force to tell us that. So from this what we derive? The Vedanta recognizes no sin. The Christianity preaches man is original sinner. Swamiji later on will tell us they are also not wrong. That is a way of putting things. But first he says, Vedanta recognizes no sin. It only recognizes error, Brahm, delusion. And the greatest error, says the Vedanta, is to say that you are weak, that you are a sinner, a miserable creature, and that you have no power and you cannot do this and that. To say this is the error. And that is the greatest error. Every time you think in that way, you as it were rivet one more link in the chain that binds you down. You add one more layer of hypnotism onto your own soul. Hypnotism is you are made to believe what you are not. Therefore, whosoever thinks he is weak is wrong. Whosoever thinks he is impure is wrong. Understand? Now you have to put something more here. Swamiji says, whosoever thinks he is weak is wrong. Whoever says you are weak also is wrong. Whoever thinks he is impure is wrong. Whoever thinks you are impure also is wrong. And is throwing a bad thought into the world. This we must always bear in mind, that in the Vedanta there is no attempt at reconciling the present life, the hypnotized life, this false life which you assume with the ideal. But this false life must go practical. And the real life which is always existing must manifest itself. Because Swamiji has been talking, on the other side I am telling, of various Upanishads, so this thought Swamiji has already spoken. And the real life which is always existing must manifest itself, must shine out. No man becomes purer and purer. It is a matter of greater manifestation. The veil drops away, and the native purity of the soul, native means inborn purity, of the soul begins to manifest itself. Everything is ours already. Infinite purity, freedom, love and power. Now you can start practice on these points. Infinite purity, freedom, love and power. We have. If we try to manifest them, they will manifest. If we try to become small and hide them, they will be hidden. This is Vedanta. The Vedanta also says that not only can this be realized in the depths of, next point, practical. The Vedanta also says that not only can this be realized in the depths of forest or cave, but by men in all possible conditions of life. We have seen that the people who discovered these truths were neither living in caves nor forests, nor following the ordinary vocations of life, but men who have every reason to believe led the busiest of lives. We saw that last time, that not the titular monarch, but ruling monarch. Men who had to command armies, to sit on thrones and look to the welfare of millions. And all this in the days of absolute monarchy, not in the titular monarchy. And not as in these days, when a king is to a great extent a mere figurehead. Yet they could find time to think out all this. Another question is time. Let alone kings. Every day we complain, whether we are householders or monks or everybody, we have so much work, where is the time? Swamiji said, do you have more work than Arjuna? Do you have more work than Janaka? Yet they could find time to think out all these thoughts, to realize them and to teach them to humanity. Janaka also was a teacher. This Pravan Jaivali is a teacher. If you realize, automatically the teaching comes up. How much more then should be practical for us, whose lives compared with theirs are lives of leisure? That we cannot realize them is a shame to us. That is the language. That is practical Vedanta. Seeing that we are comparatively free all the time, having very little to do. This we find in the conversations of all Sri Ramakrishna's disciples. They would ask their disciples to work, and they would say, don't say that you don't have time to meditate. You have, if you properly use it. My requirements are as nothing compared with those of an ancient absolute monarch. My wants are as nothing compared with the demands of Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, commanding a huge army, and yet he could find time in the midst of the din and turmoil of battle to talk the highest philosophy and to carry it into his own life also. One point here, some people do not believe that this was a talk after Bhishmacharya had blown the conch, when everybody is ready to fight. How can they talk so much? That is nonsense. They can talk if they want to. I have seen in my own life, not Kurukshetra war. I will describe a scene. Proofs are in the press. The manager publication department is tell me now, and the editor is sitting with my Guruji. Unless they are sure that this word expresses Vedanta better, they would not allow that proof to proceed. Time. Everybody has time. Surely we ought to be able to do so, as much as in this life of ours, comparatively free, easy and comfortable. Most of us here have more time than we think we have. If we really want to use it for good, with the amount of freedom we have, we can attend to 200 ideals in this life, if we will. But we must not degrade the ideal to the actual. That is not practical. We are able to do work that is practical. That should not be. One of the most insinuating things come to us in the shape of persons who apologize for our mistakes and teach us how to make special excuses for all our foolish wants and foolish desires. And we think that their ideal is the only ideal we need have. Vast majority of mankind is busy doing this. But it is not so. The Vedanta teaches no such thing. The actual should be reconciled to the ideal. The present life should be made to coincide with the life eternal. Life eternal. Om Paratatve Sadalino Ramakrishna Samagya Yo Dharma Sthapana Rato Viresham Tam Namamyam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. I had missed looking at the wall today.